From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, this is a Headache Soul production. Welcome to Just the Tip-Sters, America's favorite true crime podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Morgan, and with me today for part 2 of her amazing story is the fantastic Nicole DeLamora. And where we left off with episode 1 was the event that happened where the Sylmar serial killer had shot her numerous times and did not end her life and went on to end other people's lives. But Nicole's recovery story is as fascinating of a story as anything I've ever heard. So I wanted to talk to her about that. So we can start with what's the first thing you remember after it happened? Because you had lost so much blood. You remember being held by a stranger, a young man who showed up. What's the next thing you remember? Do you remember being transported to USC?
I do. I remember being placed on the stretcher when the paramedics got there. And I remember seeing helicopters above flying over me. I remember, everything was happening so quickly.
Which is amazing you remember any of this.
Yeah. And I remember them telling me, we don't know exactly. I was wearing a tan shirt and black pants. So they're like, we don't know where else you're bleeding from. We're going to have to cut your clothes off. So we know, where all this blood's coming from because I just had so much blood loss. And I was like, okay, whatever. At that point, you're just like, whatever. So they had to worry about dressing my wounds and taking care and trying to stop the blood, to save me. So I remember them putting me on the stretcher, putting me in the ambulance, and then putting the oxygen on my face. And at that time, a lady from one of the officers from LAPD hopped in the paramedic vehicle with me. And she was asking me questions to the best, because they're trying to
keep you awake.
Yeah, keep me awake. And then she was also trying to figure out,
who could have done this. Yeah.
So she was asking me questions and I was just looking at her like, I can barely even talk. So she's like, it's okay. Just relax and breathe. And I just remember the paramedic who was helping me in the back. They asked him, where should we take her? Glendale Adventist. I remember him saying he paused and he says LAUSC. It's major gunshot trauma, LAUSC.
Wow.
So that decision saved my life too. There's some of the best trained doctors there.
Yes.
So I don't remember much of the ride after that. Once they put the oxygen on me, I got there. I remember them moving me in the movement from the stretcher and putting me on and transporting me into the hospital.
Were you feeling any pain at this point?
I was not.
Right.
I was so
because you're in shock.
Yeah. So out of it. So they wheeled me in there, and I just remember this nurse saying, hello, we got to get your passcode to your phone. And I was like,
right.
I was like, what? You need what?
Right.
They're like, yeah, we have to unlock your phone. We have to know who to call, and all this stuff. And so miraculously, I gave it to her.
Yeah.
So she got into my phone, and that's how she got to call my mom.
Right.
And access any of, my recent calls.
Wow.
So then that was it. It was total darkness. And I woke up. My surgery was about 4 hours.
You had no idea that you were in surgery for 4 hours. Okay.
No. I woke up and then I was like, okay, what's going on here? And I didn't feel any pain. I mean, I was on morphine. I was on all kinds of medications. And I woke up and I was like, nobody's here. And then I looked to the side and my mom was there and my aunt. I remember them telling me, this is what's happened. And here's a board, write down, this is how you're going to communicate with us.
They already had
now.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they knew the wound in your neck and your throat was going to be too hard for you to communicate.
Correct. Yeah, I had a trach, so I couldn't, a feeding tube and a trach.
Right.
The whole back of the wall behind me it's machines keeping me alive.
Right.
So I woke up and I just started telling them. I was so scared. I didn't know, where's my car? Where's my son?
The things you worry about, right?
Yeah. So I just.
Where's my purse?
Exactly. Like everything's in your purse.
Right.
So where's my phone?
Right.
Forget all that. Where's my phone? No,
some bitch asked for my passcode. What is she doing with my phone? She better not be sending pictures or something.
Exactly. What do I have in there that someone's saying? No, I'm just kidding. So I started writing on the board, just trying to give descriptions of the vehicle.
That is, so let me just stop you. That is spectacular. The very first thing you think of when you wake up after life-saving surgery and you've been shot multiple times is, how can I help them, get a description of this motherfucker? That's amazing.
Yeah, I was scared. Like I said, I think I said in the last episode, I was scared he was going to go to my house, or,
Yeah.
I mean, your
he could
registration's
have
in
had
there, your
your
driver's
information,
license
right?
is in there, So, that's how I'd communicate, is on the dry erase board. And then she's like, oh God, we got to get the detectives in here, because she's giving
real information.
Yes.
I'm sure they were shocked that you even had the, cogent brain enough to do that.
Yeah. So they came in. I remember, I think they came later that day, and I had written everything down, and they're like, okay. And then I remember being in the hospital watching the news, and I kept seeing shootings, like shootings. And then my mom was I was in a relationship at the time, and my boyfriend was watching the news because they wanted to be kept in the loop of what's going on out there, and maybe they can kind of put two and two together. But my mom was she didn't know my mindset, and how I was feeling and processing everything. So she's like, turn that off. Like, don't give her false hope. Like,
Oh,
don't let her
wow.
see that other stuff. Like, she can't watch shootings right now, So it was a lot of, it's not until the shit hits the fan that a lot of people, they put their 2 cents in, and people are fighting, and, there's some order, and then the order is just thrown all over the place because
Right.
feelings get involved. And then, I was under protective, they were protecting me.
I'm sure you had to be.
Yeah. So they were very selective of who they let even see me.
Right.
So, and I have so many close friends that are like family, like sisters, and not a lot of people process that. They're like, oh, you're not blood, you're not family,
Right.
you can't come in. And so many.
But they probably didn't know who. It's such a rare thing, Nicole, that a rando shoots a complete stranger with no connection to them. It's such an odd thing. So they probably thought, did someone pay this motherfucker as a contract on her? I know you said they asked you, was it a road rage incident, which could have happened out here, definitely in Southern California, probably everywhere, but definitely out here. We've seen it more than once. So, I mean, I'm sure they just didn't know who to protect you from.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So a lot of people's feelings got hurt because they're like, just because I'm not her blood doesn't mean I'm not like her sister. I've known her since I was 16, So it was just chaos at the hospital,
Yeah.
But I'm just glad everyone was there, because that energy of everybody being there and being present and praying for me, all that positive energy helped me heal too.
I know it did.
And stay strong.
Yes, I know it did.
So, yeah, it was pretty chaotic there for a while.
So when the detectives come in and are like, I can't believe she's ready to talk, and she's under a lot of medication, and what can she even say? So how did your first discussion with them go?
Well, they were amazed, because they're like, wow, I didn't think we'd get information from her for a couple weeks, if not maybe a month even, or something, But my mindset, I was like, let's do it.
Yep.
Let's get this person and get him arrested, get him off the street. So that's where, it started, where I had a job to do, and I was going to, come hell or high water, I was going to do that job,
And the details you remembered, the SUV you're describing, the louvered back, I guess, like back windows or back part, those details are priceless to detectives. The fact that you remembered that kind of stuff is overwhelmingly amazing. And then they can take your statement and match it to the video finally and be like, she's right.
Right.
And they, didn't think you knew what the back of his SUV would look like, because he shot you from the back. Like, how could she see the back of his SUV? But we know what happened.
Right.
And that is fascinating. So you're telling the detectives these details, and what are they saying to you? What are they asking you?
They just said, wow, we can't believe how much you remember, because a lot of people suppress it, or a lot of people can't even talk about it because they're just still processing what just happened,
I love that you're just like a force of nature. You don't take the time to process it for yourself. Your main concern is getting the information out there to stop him from hurting anyone else.
Yeah.
You're just like focused. You wake up from a life-saving surgery and you're focused on, what can I say to help get this fucker caught?
Yes,
That's
This person had to
amazing.
get caught and off the street as soon as possible. It was a very, so much goes through your head, and you want to try to save anyone else from going through something like that. I never thought like people say, you never think something like that's going to
Of
happen
course
to you.
not.
And it's like, you
It's
never know.
your chances of being struck by lightning are far more than ever being a target of a serial killer. It's very rare what you've been through. It's very rare that a serial killer has random victims, and it's very rare that you survived.
Yeah.
I mean, all of it is rare. And I know you thought, well, this not you had a discussion or a feeling from God like, not today, not today. Nope. I got work to do. And boy, do you. I mean, it's amazing. So you sort of know that you don't know the perpetrator, that you didn't recognize him. And you probably felt nobody in my life hates me enough to hire a hitman. But the police don't know who did this to you. And, it's sort of one of my favorite phrases and one of my least favorite phrases, which is start with the in-laws and move to the outlaws. So
Yes.
the people close to you, was there like a list of people that they had to exclude?
Yes, I had a neighbor that was a renter next door, and she had caused some problems in our neighborhood. And so there was a previous legal thing with her where I had a restraining order against her. So they looked at her,
Right.
and also the person that I had a relationship with for about 12 years or so. They looked at him because we had broken up, and it was about 2 years or so that he kept trying to like contact me and get things going again in a relationship type of setting.
And he had sent text just like a couple of weeks or a week before.
Yeah,
Pretty recent.
when the detectives went through my emails and my cell phone, they had they had everything.
Right.
So they had documentation of him reaching out with emails and texts and stuff. So yeah, they looked at, and then they even looked at the person I was with at the time in the current relationship. They're like, hey, what's your past? And
Yeah.
let's look at you,
Right.
and where were you this morning? Which he was at work like in Santa Fe Springs. So
Oh,
as soon as he got word, he left work right away and came out to where I was, which was LAUSC by that time. So yeah, there was the neighbor, the nutty neighbor, and and thank God she's not there anymore. But there was her, and then my ex that I was in a relationship with for a few years. So they
I
pulled
bet you
him
everybody
aside
was
actually at the
questioned.
site and
Oh,
questioned
wow.
him. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, he showed up.
Yes.
Wow.
He was over there. I'd heard from some people at work that he was at the location off to the side, and the police,
Wow.
pulled him over or pulled him to the side and kind of questioned him out
Wow.
there.
Okay. Wow.
Which I'm sure was kind of mixed emotions for him too. There's a lot going on. You don't expect that, I'm sure, either in the morning when you get to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an awful lot. So you probably knew that it wasn't someone you knew, but the police had to eliminate the people closest to you and then move out. Did you, think at all in your memory banks, like, did I recognize his face? Did I ever come up against him for some reason? That he held a weird grudge? Did you ever think you knew him at all?
No, because when I saw the vehicle, it was a Suburban, it's a larger SUV. And I was like, I don't know anyone with that vehicle, with that description. And obviously he had dark tinted windows. So, and to me, it appeared that he was wearing like a hoodie. So his neck was basically covered in it. Like I said, it was dark.
Right.
So I was like, from what I did see of the person at that time in the morning, I couldn't make a connection in any way, shape, or form, that I knew this person at all.
To someone you'd ever met.
Like I said, at first I thought, I was like, okay, it's a carjacking,
Right.
Or they a mistaken identity or something.
Right.
I don't know. Those were the thoughts that went through my mind. First thing is like, okay, they're going to try to take my car or.
Yeah, you thought maybe someone, like he was doing one thing and then when they disabled you, someone else would come and take your car.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my first thought.
Right.
Yeah.
So your recovery is literally one of the more fascinating things I've ever heard of. So you spend 4 days at USC and then you're transferred. And let's talk about the fact that because you're the victim of a serial killer, you are under an assumed name.
Yes, I was Nancy Nye.
Which is like a really cute name, Nancy Nye.
Yes.
And then you're transferred to a new hospital and you get a new assumed name.
Sally 7.
Yeah. So you're Nancy 9 and Sally 7. So you're
Yes.
transferred to Kaiser, and you said that the staff there was fantastic, and you're probably able to communicate more and talk more, and yet you still have so much ahead of you, so much stuff going on. Were you questioned again at that hospital?
The detectives were in close contact with me at all times. I mean, they'd pop in or they'd call or they'd come in or they'd come to schedule something with me and sit down with me. But they were basically on call. They said anything that comes to your mind, have your family call, because it was on the whiteboard still. I still had my trach and my feeding tube when I went to Kaiser. So they were basically on call, but there was no formal investigation again until I got home.
Okay.
When they let me kind of settle in at home and get comfortable. And I think they know, they're professionals, they know their job. And sometimes when you get home, you're
remember more.
Yeah, you're more comfortable.
Yeah, you're in your
things
own.
just kind of start. And I think that is our minds are very powerful things. And I think in the hospital, it's such a uncomfortable place.
Yes,
you just want to get
it's
home.
foreign.
Yeah. And you want to get back to your normal life as soon as you can. I didn't want to be in the hospital for a day. If I could, they could have done the surgery at my house. And
Right. Happy. You've been like in the guest room so I can clean up later.
Yeah.
So you said something to me that was very powerful. You said you felt like a prisoner in your own body. Was that in the hospital or was that when you got home?
In the hospital, I just wanted to go home. When I got home is when I felt that the most because I couldn't talk. I couldn't shower myself.
Right.
I couldn't do anything for myself.
Right.
And I'm such an independent person.
Yes, you are.
Drove me up a wall.
Right.
Having somebody to have to shower me, I had bullet holes in my back and my right arm. So they had to actually clean those out and pack them like old Western, like pack those holes with.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So I had to shower a certain way. I had to eat a certain way through a feeding tube. I had oxygen at home. I had a pellet, which was he shot me with the shotgun. So he had buckshot and he also
slugs.
had slugs.
What an amazing piece of shit.
I know.
And I'd read some of the news reports. He had modified it to, it's a pistol grip.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, he cut the.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just, it's on par with what we've heard in times of war as a dirty bomb. He made his weapon of choice the dirtiest he could make it to do the most damage. And he did a whole lot of damage to you.
He did. He was a very evil person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just one of the fortunate ones that are still here.
So
I did have a bullet. I had a bullet in my face, and then I had shrapnel in my arm. So I couldn't lift my arm. I didn't have full mobility of my arm, range motion.
So you are in your second hospital and your second alias, and then you are allowed to go home. And you said that's sort of when you started to feel like a prisoner in your body because it's a big adjustment. You have people around you that are trained medical professionals and they're there to help you. And now you have to rely on family and yourself.
Yes, I was very fortunate because my aunt wasn't working at the time, my Aunt Jackie. So she put her life on hold, as she does for everybody in our family. And she came and took care of me. And my mom did also. They took shifts with me.
Right.
I all learned how to feed me, how to take care of everything,
That must have been hard for somebody as independent as you.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't sleep on my side. I couldn't sleep on my stomach. I couldn't sleep on my back because I had the trach, the feeding tube.
Holy cow.
And I had a bullet in my chin area that they still had to take out. And then my arm, couldn't sleep on my arm because, they were waiting to do surgery on my arm till I was more stable and I got maybe my trach out. because I had a lot of shrapnel in my arm. They had to go in and do surgery after that, and my face surgery. So I was just very uncomfortable, and I was on different pain medications. It's like if you be on this for so long and you got to switch to this. So it was morphine and Norco and Dilaudid and patches, and I was irritable and I was cranky and I wanted to do laundry and I wanted to clean the house. And I was like, I can't sit here anymore. This is not me. I want to go back to work. So my son was going to COC and he kind of learned some of my care, and my coworker, Chris, also came out when my family had appointments to go to and kind of stuff to do. He was so sweet. He came out and helped take care of me. A coworker that he's a friend too.
That means a lot. That shows who you are.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, it does take a village. I mean, when the shit hits the fan, that's where you find out who really has your back, that it separates the phonies from the real people.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and then, it's funny because I was thinking, I'm like, I'd wake my aunt up. My poor aunt would be sleeping and I'm like, hey, look it. I want to talk. And they're so dead tired from shopping and cleaning and cooking and doing their own things that they needed to do for themselves. And then being up with me at all hours of the night. I had to eat like every 4 hours or something crazy like that. And then the trach is so scary because your body produces a lot of mucus. So you wake up coughing and choking, and, you have this machine that you have to triage, your trach and stuff. So not being able to breathe is the worst feeling ever. I mean, I can't even, gasping for air is no fun.
Did you have to sleep like sitting up in a recliner or?
I did. Yeah. Okay. I got a whole new, my mom actually got a whole couch set for me that reclines, like every single chair, and it reclines because that's the only way I could sleep.
Right. When you said I can't sleep on my side, I can't sleep on my stomach, I can't sleep on my back, I'm like, what's left?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. My living room was my recovery area, and then it's,
how many days were you home when they came to you and say, we got him?
Actually, I was in the hospital.
Oh, still in the hospital
when they said we got him. The SWAT went in and got him. Yeah. So he actually was caught before I went to Kaiser.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I believe I was in LAU. So you know what? I can't, don't quote me on that.
Right.
It was one of the hospitals. I know. I remember
you had a few things going on.
Oh, yeah. Plus, I was on the pain medication. Didn't know what was going on sometimes.
You could have been Nancy. You could have been Sally.
Yes.
You were either one of those anonymous people, but at some point they came and said to you.
Yes, that we got him. And I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Because I remember in, I think it was Panorama City, there was something on the news, same type of vehicle, same color or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, is that a copycat killer? Is that him? So when they came in and told me they got him, I was like, are you sure? Because I saw someone on the news, similar vehicle. You start looking at everything with a fine tooth comb when you're in that type of a situation. Right. So, and they're like, no, we're positive it's him, girl.
It was like a standoff, right?
Yeah. SWAT went in and got him. It
was like a 9-hour standoff or something.
Yeah. He lived in Sylmar. So they blocked off the whole area and they went in and he was trying to flee. I guess he had passports and money and he was trying to run with the shotgun. He was trying to hop over the back fence, but they had the battering rams there. They SWAT. It was no cop cars. Right. It was full SWAT.
Right.
So
they get him and they are sure. They're telling you we are sure. Did that bring any sort of relief or peace to you?
Oh yeah. I think it did for a lot of the people, the victims' families and the survivors, because I know one of the victims in the case that survived, Julian, his mom had mentioned to me that they didn't know he was caught for months and months and months when he was caught. So
they weren't notified?
They didn't tie because he was killing with a different weapon at that time. He was shot with a handgun. Okay. I was shot with a shotgun. They think I was his first shotgun victim.
Right.
Lucky me. So
lucky you.
Yeah. So they lived in fear for a long time because they didn't. They thought he was still out there.
I didn't know that their other shootings weren't connected.
Well, they're connected, but they just hadn't known at that time that it was solidified it was him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was very fortunate that, that they went in and got him so soon. And by the time I got to the new hospital, I was more at peace. I was more relaxed when they told me. And obviously when I went home,
Was there any fear when you went home, like, I need to lock everything up and I need to be under a lock and key until, I don't know. Did you feel unsafe at all when you were home?
I did. I closed all the blinds. I was like, come with me down the hallway. I mean, I was in fear for like that
Sure.
first week or so. Then I got really angry because I asked the police, he has tattoos, is he in a gang, They're like, no, gang affiliation, no, nothing.
You said he was a wannabe. That's what you said to
Yes.
me the first time we talked. You're like, he was a wannabe gang member. And I'm like, charming.
Yeah, very attractive. Long story short with that is that I was very scared at first. And then I just got really angry. And I'm like, nah, you know what? He might have taken me down. But I got back up.
Yes, you
and
did.
now his ass is in jail.
You're a true phoenix. You're a true phoenix rising back up out of the ashes. I mean, I don't know that many people would go through what you went through and are still here. And not only still here, you're not just existing, you're thriving, and you're doing so much for other people. I wanted to go back while we were recording. There was a little interruption of a delivery, and all the good shit doesn't get recorded that we're talking about. But one of the beautiful things you said, because I wondered if you ever thought, well, this is it. I'm not going to make it. And the beautiful thing, that you said, tell me again, the beautiful thing you said, that you were like, not today, but then you had a different feeling.
Yeah, I was having a conversation. It's funny because the detectives even asked me what was going through your mind, and I told them, they're like, you were thinking all that stuff. I go, because they know the crime aspect of it, but sometimes they don't know what the person that's gone through it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we thank God we had that type of connection with the detectives. I did, where we can talk openly about how I felt, and I was like, yeah, I was telling God, like, why is this happening? Who is this? And not today, I'm in charge here,
Mm-hmm.
And the more I felt feeling like I was sinking in a deeper and deeper hole, having to make split decisions to get away from this person that was still shooting at me, I was like, okay, I can't breathe, as time kept going on and I kept losing more and more blood, and no one was helping me. I felt defeated. I fought so hard, and I just felt like I was spinning my wheels and I wasn't going anywhere. And I was like, okay, God, like, now it's time for me. At one point I was crawling on all fours on the sidewalk, and because being in that fetal position or the crawling position took pressure off your chest so I could breathe better.
Because your lungs were filling with,
Yeah. So I was, crawling around on all fours out there, and I had to have that thought of, okay, I've been fighting with you this whole time that I wasn't going to go. But now the reality is it's been a while, and I've been bleeding, and I can't breathe. It just felt like I was slipping in and out of consciousness.
right.
And I just told God, I hope everything that I did, I tried to live life the best that I could, and forgive me for anything that I've done that was wrong. And you have that thought of, I'm going to have to succumb to accepting that this is it, and that's a hard pill to swallow. But something comes over you and you feel a peace at that point. And that's why I fought so hard during the whole process before I got to that point. I didn't want to go. I was going to go down with the fight,
And you did. And you didn't go down, but you fought.
Yeah. So I did, there comes a certain point where you got to put it in God's hands, and it's not
surrender.
Up to you. It's not up to you.
True
there's
surrender.
a bigger force up there, and that's what's in control.
And the thing you thought was, I've done the best job I could raising my son. He has a father who adores him, and there's a group of people around him who will take care of him. That was the thing that you thought.
Yeah, that was my piece. I was like, okay, at least he's not two. He's just out of high school, and he has, my brother who's very connected to him, my mom, all my family, we're a very connected family, my cousins, my friends, godmothers, godfathers. I mean, very blessed, so I knew no matter what, my son would be taken care of,
right.
He would be.
I know it would be different if you weren't there, but that had to bring you at least some peace, like, okay, well, if I have to go, even though I'm not agreeing to this, but if I have to go, I know he'll be okay.
Yeah, and his dad is a really good man. I mean, he was by my bedside with our son, being supportive to my family. I mean, he's family still, and he always will be. And he's a good father. He's a good person. So very grateful to Tony for being there for our son and for me.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, very lucky.
So you are at home recovering, and you have a village helping you, and you've told me about the shrapnel in your chin and the doctor saying, we have to take this out. I want to warn you, it's a very small area, and I might nick a nerve. And I mean, talk about the things that happened after you actually started the recovery that were still layers of your recovery.
Yeah, so they scheduled to take that pellet out because it protruded from my face, and it was very painful because it was on the bone. Thank God it didn't go into bone or strike a nerve at the time it went in. So I remember he had classical music on. They just kept me like a local sedation, which was interesting for me. That I wasn't put under, and it just took 2 minutes. I remember him just slicing my chin area. And it came out, and he's like, okay, girl, you're done. I had a really good Dr. Levin from Panorama City, Kaiser. Awesome doctor. He
had warned you that it was so delicate that, there could be, if there's a nerve that was damaged, you might have facial paralysis. I mean, none of these things were cut and dried.
Right. There was always a risk involved.
Right.
Yeah, when they went in and did anything. So then the other surgery I had was on my back, my shoulder. They had to go in and get the glass. I was lucky because I have like dark limo tint on my car, always have, and the tint held a lot of the glass in.
Wow.
And so a lot of the stuff that went in my body, I mean, there was metal flakes coming to the surface of my skin. There's stuff that gets embedded in your skin that you don't even think about. And I was like, oh my God, I feel not human. Like all this stuff starting to come to the surface. And so they went in there and they used like a vacuum and cleaned out like glass and metal.
Wow.
Plastic and stuff. So then I had to do therapy, and I had full range in my arm again.
After being told you may not.
Right. And they said that I probably wouldn't talk again, so I had to do a chew test.
Right.
And when the lady did the scan, so my surgery on my arm was successful, did my therapy, I have full range again. But my arm does have a lot of pain still. So that is the only thing that I've ever really had a lot of pain enduring when they were packing my wounds. And then the scar tissue in my arm. I mean, it's a miracle. They said, I don't understand it, Nicole. Like you don't have nerve damage. You don't have tendon damage to your arm. That bullet that went in your face, it didn't protrude any bone. It didn't get a nerve. Like dentists have massive insurance coverages because you have so many nerves in your face, know? And they had to tie off my jugular, and it's right next to my carotid. Like everything was hairline from being detrimental. And it's like, if you don't believe, how can you not believe now?
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you look at the evidence and
Isn't
the forensics in the medical records, it's like everything was stopped just before being detrimental or really it's if you see the forensic evidence of the markers of where the bullets went in my car, you'd be like, how did this person survive?
Right.
Everything was aimed right at her.
Right.
To the driver's seat. So yeah, I had to do a chew test. They give you pudding and crackers and all this dry stuff. They have you eat it, and then it's like a full scan of your head. And I remember my aunt was there with me, and they're like, oh my God, you got to come and see this scan. And they're like, you have bullets, you have stuff still in your body, in your face, in your neck, that they didn't take out because it was too risky. And so the girls who even did the scan out here in Santa Clarita at the Kaiser were like amazed that they had never seen anything like it before. They're like, I can't believe you have stuff still in your body.
a soldier.
Yes.
Who survived a huge bombing, and there's still stuff in your body. So, tell me about, you've told me, but explain your relationship with the doctor that managed the trach, and that you had a little bit of a butting of the heads.
When I first had met him, he's like, oh, you're most likely not going to talk again. I'm very trained in my field. And it's, I was so angry because I was like, this is so new. Like, how can you say that?
How dare you?
Everything. Yeah. Not that I'm a professional, but I was so angry at him telling me what my future was going to be when he didn't even know. And it didn't even.
He didn't know who you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, you could have seen a million patients, but they're not me.
That's
like,
right.
How could you tell me this? And it was so, I fought for my life that morning. I had to go through these surgeries. I mean, I had so much on my plate, and I was like, and you're telling me I'm never going to talk again, possibly?
Yeah. When do you start your motivational speaking tour, doctor?
I know. I was just crushed. I just felt so crushed again. Then as I progressed and the trach kept getting downsized and stuff like that, I remember one time I went to an appointment and my mom and my aunt were with me, and they were downsizing my trach. They give you a smaller tube every time you go in. I remember they pulled it out and a piece of metal came rolling out onto the floor, and the nurse goes, "Oh, your piercing came out." And I'm like, piercing? Did I get pierced sometime in here or something?
Yeah.
Like, what happened? Like, I don't have a piercing. What do you mean? Like a tongue piercing, a lip piercing? And I looked and it was a pellet. Bullets were still coming out of me, even when I was getting my trach downsized. The doctor was amazed by the progress I was making because every appointment I was okay with the smaller size of trach.
Right.
So when I went in to have the trach taken out, he's like, you're going to cough. You might have to go through speech pathology. There's steps to it, So my cousin Marty was with me actually on that appointment. I remember he took my trach out and I knew it was my big day. This was my son's birthday.
Oh, wow.
And my son's like, Mom, the only wish for me is to have you talking again and your trach out and you just to be good to go like you were before the shooting. I was in there with my cousin and my cousin's like, you got this, girl. I love my cousin Marty. He's awesome. So the doctor came in and he's like, I'm going to give you some water. You're going to cough a bit. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're probably going to have to go through speech pathology. And I'm going to ask you to say some vowels. And, he kind of gave me a rundown of how it was going to go when he took the trach out. And I was so scared because I was like, oh my God, because I hear your trach, incision closes really quickly. I was scared, but I was like, I got to do this. It's time to get busy. So he pulled it out and he's like, say E. And I'm like, he's looking at me to cough and I didn't cough. And he's like, say E, say A, say I. So I kept saying it and my voice was normal. And he's looking at me perplexed. And my cousin was behind me giving me a fist, like, yeah, cheering me on. And he's like, you're not coughing. You're not. And I'm like, no, and he's like, you can talk. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, wow. And his look on his face is he was amazed, because most people who've had trauma to their throat, like I did, and I mean, from the scans and the stuff, they didn't think I was going to talk again.
Right. But they didn't know who you were.
They took the trach out and I was talking. So I was like, oh God, here I go. Now I can talk. This is just amazing. So I asked him once I healed, I says, I don't know what the situation was, but I said, you were sure pissed me off. I was really angry. And he's like, well, why? And I'm like, well, because you told me I couldn't do something. And I did. And I said, I don't know if you know what happened to me in my story and why this is going on, but
this is important because you thought that they thought you were a victim of domestic violence.
Some type of
They made some sort of, an assessment of you.
Some type of a predetermined reason why I was in the state or situation I was. But I disclosed to him, I says, I was shot by a serial killer. And he's like, what? And I said, yeah. And he goes, wow. He's like, I'm so grateful you're here. I didn't mean to be. And I says, yeah, it was pretty harsh swallowing what I had been through.
And then it was almost like being victimized again. I'm sorry. It just was.
Yeah.
And I know that's not how he meant it. He was doing what he thought was his job, but it doesn't excuse the fact that he did it.
Right.
He didn't do anything on purpose, but it still was like being victimized again.
Right. Well, I mean, and he explained to me too, what, sometimes I've in the past, I've given people a better diagnosis and it's come back to haunt me because they've been in a worse situation and they haven't been able to talk. I don't want to give anyone false hopes.
Okay.
And I said, well, okay, yeah, I understand. But like I said, we're not all the same. You know, we're
That's
all,
right.
not every patient, not every pregnancy is the same. Not everything's the same thing. You can't, cookie cutter everybody and put them in a category. So, and I said, thank you. I use that energy to get to where I'm at today.
Maybe it propelled you. The anger
yeah.
propelled you to heal. I feel like it was such a beautiful exchange of energy. You gave him a gift of telling or showing him that not every patient can be, diagnosed and put in a box right away. And he gave you the gift of, being a little bit of an asshole. So you were angry enough to like, I'm going to show him.
Yeah, I'm going to show
And you
everybody
did.
that I'm going to talk and get back on my feet. Yeah.
This is a really fascinating part of your story. And I would like this to be the last thing we talk about. So if there's any other part of your healing that you wanted to discuss, but I want to talk about what happened 2 years after when you went hiking and had a...
Oh gosh, yes. That's super important. So
It is important.
Unfortunately, when this happened to me and I got back to work, the boyfriend I was with at the time, he had a Harley and he crashed and he got in a really bad accident. So things didn't end up working out, unfortunately. And it's sad because he was there for me and his family was there for me for the most part. It just he was having a hard time getting his life back together and healing because he had a concussion. He had to have a surgery. We ended up going our separate ways and I was grateful to him and his family for helping and doing the things that they did, very supportive and loving. Very grateful to them. After that, I got into another relationship, and one of my close friends, Patty, and I, and my boyfriend at the time, Mike, we went hiking in Malibu. We're like, oh, let's go for a hike. And so we went hiking and
on a Sunday.
And I kept feeling, well, like the night before, actually, him and I went to the corner bakery and I was eating some pasta and I started coughing and like choking. So I ran to the bathroom and I had a bloody nose, like massive bloody. And I'm not a bloody nose type of person. So I was like, where's this coming from? This is crazy. And it wouldn't stop bleeding. So I went back out and I was holding my nose and I was like, we got to go home because my nose isn't stopping bleeding. And so I started coughing. And I know this sounds gross, but I coughed up a huge like chunk of like blood and like flesh. It was crazy. So then I told my mom, and she's like, you got to go to the doctor. Oh, no, my God, this is crazy. Like, you're going to have an aneurysm and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, Mom, it's cool. Ever since this happened, I have like white coat syndrome. I'm not scared of anything, but I just don't want to go to the doctors. I've been poked and prodded and
enough for one life. You're a pincushion.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, no doctors. It's like, oh, I'll be fine. So went home. My nose stopped bleeding, whatever. The next day we go hiking. I felt fine. No more bloody nose, no nothing. Go hiking. All of a sudden I felt we were going up like like an incline. And I was like, you guys, I told my friend and I told my boyfriend, I says, I feel like something's stuck in my throat. Like I can't go up a hill because it's not my chest. It's not a breathing issue. Like I'm not panting and I'm active. I can do stuff, but it's like in my throat, like something's obstructed. And they're like, oh my God, we got to call 911. I go, no. I just need to like relax for a minute. So we went and walked around in the museum there at Pepperdine and kind of just chilled for a while. And then all of a sudden, we go home the next day. I'm at work and I'm talking to a coworker in my office and I feel like a tearing sensation coming up my throat. So I coughed. And it was a pellet from the BB gun. I mean, from the shotgun.
Right.
And I was like, my coworker and I looked at each other and he's like, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, there was no blood. There was no mucus. There was nothing. It was just the pellet. And I was like, oh my God, this is what was trying to come out, because I've heard it works. They work their way.
Its way out of your body.
So I called Chuck
the detective.
Knowles, and I said, Chuck, you're not going to believe this. He's like, kiddo, with you, I believe anything. Go ahead. Let me know what it is. So I told him, I told him the story. I went hiking and this is what happened. And he's like, you just coughed up a bullet. He's like, oh my God, put it in a baggie. He's like, I got to come pick it up.
Always the detective. It's evidence.
Yes. So they collected the pellet that rolled out of my throat when I had the trach downsized at Kaiser. And then they collected that. He came and picked that one up too. And he was just shaking his head. He's like, you're so lucky that you didn't choke on in the nighttime or you're just, man, how did that not travel to your brain? Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Like, he's like, I just, with you, he goes, you amaze me. It's still so blessed and then my voice was raspy with that in my system still. So I sounded like kind of like a raspy,
Like a cigarette
yeah.
smoker.
Like
Mm-hmm.
and when I coughed that up, my voice was back to normal. That was obstructing my windpipe.
You are a literal walking, talking miracle.
Yeah.
You really are. I mean, that story floored me, and I know, like you said, pieces of metal are working their way out. I mean, all these years later, do you think there'll be more that come out?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what's left in me, and hopefully it comes out in a good way,
In a good way.
Yeah, not in a
Right.
bad way.
Right.
But that was actually like half the size of a dime, because I remember in the
Yeah, you
evidence,
showed me.
in the evidence
Picture.
photos,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, it was that big.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a large
It could
piece.
have choked you. It could have done internal damage and you wouldn't have known. I mean, I don't want to give Alexander Hernandez any more credence, but he's, just the gift that keeps on giving. Mark used to call it the ripple effect. Like when someone does something terrible to someone, it's not just that person, it ripples out into their community. And I know we have other people to talk about that have survived, but their lives are changed forever. And the thing is, your life could have been changed forever and is in some way, but you won't let it be changed in a bad way.
Right.
You see all of it as a gift and with gratitude. And I mean, I can't believe that isn't a huge part of your healing. I mean, that I feel like God bless Western medicine and doctors and talented and skilled surgeons, but you are your own best healer. I truly believe that.
Well, I'm very fortunate too that, like when you brought up moments of me feeling trapped in my body and alone, I went back through my mind and I'm like, I don't understand. There's AA and there's NA, because I had an ex that was going through programs, and they have sponsors. They have phone numbers they can call if they're having a bad day or a bad night, and they can get support. And I thought, what about victims? The only thing that's offered to us is reimbursement for stuff that was damaged, property, whatever, and therapy with a therapist. But where's the commonality of me relating to somebody who really understands what I went through? How is there not a support line? I mean, I'm not going to commit suicide, so I don't want to call a suicide prevention line, but and a therapist knows, I'm not knocking their profession, but they know book knowledge and they study psychology and stuff, so they can assist me in getting through certain things. But I can't call one in the middle of the night. I can't go have coffee with one just randomly the next day. I feel like there's something missing as a support group or support system for people who have survived, something to be set up. I'd like to eventually branch out and reach out to people who need a phone tree to call and say, hey, I'm having a really bad night. I'm having a nightmare. Someone having gone through the same thing or similar experience understands. It's a commonality where you feel like this person gets me. They understand. And how did they work through it? How did they get through it? And I'm not going to say exactly which hospital I went to, where I had a nurse speak to me about a violent crime that was done onto her. And I told her, she goes, how do you get through it? And I says, at the Bible, you look up anger, fear, hatred. I mean, everything you need to see or hear is in the Bible. You can, like I said, I'm not here to convert
anyone,
but it did help me, because
yes.
I didn't have any answers. And then as I started getting well and more mobile and getting my trach out, my feeding tube, I started reading near-death experience books, and it made me feel normal, because you feel like a misfit. You feel like you don't belong anywhere. You don't know anything. And people are going to question the things that you lived through. And they're factual. They're factual events. And it's like, can someone hear me and understand me? Just one person out there. So I even asked the Victims Association up in Sacramento. There's a really sweet girl that would always reach out to me. I think her name was Louise Ashley. And I asked her one conversation when she had called to see if I was okay. I said, I have a question. Like, how come you guys don't have a program like that? Like, is there anything that exists out there? And she goes, I'd have to look into it. I'll get back to you. And she says, but Nicole, a lot of people can't talk about it. They don't want to talk about surviving or going through something so traumatic. They rather just forget it. But I'm like, okay, even if they want to forget it, they still have to heal from it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you feel like someone's going to give you a weird eye when you're telling them something, or like looking at you sideways because they don't understand, you just feel even more lost. So it's like you're trying to recover, you're trying to find your place, you're trying to get back on your feet, you're trying to make sense of it all, and then you still have to be a witness and go through a trial, and it's a constant bump in the road and roadblock. So those books really helped me. The Bible and near-death experience books. I have a book at home that was really great, and that really helped me. So I just when I spoke with the one lady in one of the hospitals that was part of the staff, I just told her, you and I haven't been through the same experience. It's not the same type of an incident, but we have to choose to put that experience behind us, but grow from the challenges and surviving and get our lives back. Because the more time that we stay stuck in that trauma is giving that perpetrator more power. And they didn't deserve to have a second of that pain or that justice
more attention.
Right.
No more attention.
They didn't deserve any of it. So, or justification, of taking us down. It's up to us to find that feeling, getting back on our feet. And we have to make a conscious decision to do that. No one's going to do it for us. We're given all these pills, take this pain pill, take that pain pill. And I was horrible on those pain pills, and I've learned that a lot of people get addicted to pain pills. And I know some people need that stuff to deal with it temporarily. You can get through certain things without having to deal with stuff like that. I put all my stuff, all my pain pills, all my prescriptions, and I took them back to Kaiser and said, I don't want any of them. Massages, like natural therapies, got me through a lot of healing instead of being on, like I said, Norco, morphine, Dilaudid. All that stuff was just, does strange things to your body, to your temperament, to your behavior. And I don't feel anything positive came out of being prescribed any of that stuff either.
I'm glad you recognize that for yourself. And I know that is a large part of your mission. And we'll talk about that in a following episode. But next episode, we're going to talk about the trial and what you went through in testifying. And I'm just really delighted that you're here today and every day. And more cowbell.
If you would like to support this podcast and get early access and other cool murderous swag, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.